Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the introduction. eu.bac, eu.bac, that's a completely new pronunciation. Never heard it before. Normally people call us eu.bac. Especially people from UK like to call us eu.bac because they think eu.bac sounds somewhat rude. Normally we call ourselves eu.bac. So eu.bac is the European Building Automation and Controls Association based in Brussels, and we are representing the interests of the European manufacturers of building automation and controls manufacturers. And I want to give you an update on what's going on in Brussels. In Brussels we are an influencer on policy issues, and we also inform our members about what's going on in Brussels in terms of policies. And one of the major topics in policies is a European building energy performance of buildings directive. And this is something that comes up, an issue that comes up probably every 7-8 years. We see a recast of this directive. So it's important for us that our technology has a good representation in this directive, because it makes a lot of sense while the building envelope, any technical building systems like ventilation system and other parts of the building, technical parts of the building, they are all covered by either the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, or they are covered by eco-design directives. And to be in a vacuum then and not being regulated is definitely a disadvantage, as long as you are the only technical equipment then where savings can be done, because everything else has seen minimum standards. So what's the current situation in the market? Basically some information on building automation and controls. It's a low investment in this building. If you talk about new buildings, it's maybe 1.5%, maybe 2%. If you're really a techno nerd, it's 2% of the total building cost. And the investment will be done at the end of the setup of the building. It will not be done at the beginning. So in the beginning you make your planning, and then you just build up the envelope. Then your budget is gone, and then you start with the technical equipment in the building, and then in the end you do the automation of the building. So this is where you can have some savings, or we must have some savings, because it comes to budget questions. But in the end, and especially when we're talking about building stock, it's a low capital investment where we say it's about 30 euro per square meter, with a payback period of 2 to 3 years. Some might say it's a little longer, but it's basically a short payback period compared to the building envelope, and it's a short payback period also compared to the other technical building equipment. So energy savings can be done, of course, because it's especially used in non-residential buildings. In non-residential buildings, we have the issue that people do not pay the energy bill. The people who are using the buildings, the employees in an office building, they are not paying the energy bill. So they have no personal incentive to save a lot of energy. Maybe they are super green and they like to save energy, but basically people don't turn the heating off, they don't turn the ventilation off, so that usually they behave different when they do not have to pay the bill in the end. And in residential buildings it's even a lower investment, but there it can be enormous investment when you're a technical nerd and you want to automate everything, and not only look for energetic improvements, but also look for some more comfort and this and that you can do with your own building. So it can be extremely expensive, but in the end, when it comes just to energy saving in a standard European building, it's 12 euro per square meter, so that's not much. And also payback period when it comes to energy efficiency investments of 2 to 3 years, with returns that are 9 times higher than the investments. There's another situation, something that we do have in Germany, but that we do not have in other European countries, is when you look at investments in room-by-room controls. Room-by-room controls, they are mandatory here in Germany. They are not mandatory anywhere else. So if you go on travel to Austria, you find many hotels where you cannot control the heating, especially so 2-star cheaper hotels. You cannot control the heating in your room only by opening the windows. I mean, this makes not a lot of sense. So people obviously have not the incentive to invest in this technology. So it makes a lot of sense to have a room-by-room control. That's not there at the moment. So we have an estimation of about 500 million radiators in Europe, in Europe's homes especially, where you still have no valve, or you just have a manual valve, which is not good enough for a good energy efficiency in a building. Or look at the UK, where you have the control for the heat in your rooms. You just have it in your living room, and with your living room, you're controlling your bathroom, your bedroom, everything, the whole house with one control. This makes not a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense when you live in all the rooms and you take advantage of having many rooms, but not when you're a single and you have 5 rooms and you're in one room and now you heat up all the other rooms. Makes not a lot of sense. And you have to heat up all the other rooms. This makes not a lot of sense. So now the problem was that we wanted to incentivize the European Union to make some stricter regulation on the use of building automation controls, and I come to the why in the next slide. But first of all, one of the major topics when it comes to investments, it's also what is the situation in growth of jobs. I mean, in Germany, we do not have a large unemployment rate, but when you look to other countries in Europe, you see this is a major issue where Brussels politics is really interested in seeing growth in jobs and not getting rid of jobs because of new technology. So we made some estimations. We made them together with an institute that did a study for us. It was Paul Waite in the UK, and was a study that we made together with ECI. ECI can mean many things, but ECI actually is the European Copper Institute, and the European Copper Institute is very much interested in having more building automation because it means more cabling. This means more copper. So they're already by our side when we try to make any kind of study. And you see that net jobs created, it's a large number of 1.3 to 2.1 million additional jobs by deploying our technology like building automation and controls. So this was one argument that we brought forward in the European Union. And the other arguments were that basically, we have an insufficient regulatory framework up to now. It is based on Article 8 of the current European Building Energy Directive, but it's not sufficient because this was done some 9 years ago, and some 9 years ago people were saying, well, we have different climate zones in Europe, we have different incentives for people, and so we do not want to take that possibility to do regulation away from the national governments. This was the argument some 9 years ago. Today it looks a little bit different, and our major arguments were the split incentives. The split incentives that we see between the investor and the building operator. So the investor, he wants to reduce the investment cost, but then the technical means are not there for the building operator to save the operation costs and the energy costs of the building. So we have split incentives here, and there's no way to overcome these incentives. And then we have split incentives between building owners and tenants. So the tenant wants to have the technical means to reduce his energy bill, but the owner of the building, the landlord, doesn't want to invest. So, and we have a lack of awareness. So many people think, well, energy efficiency can be done by isolation, new windows. It can be done by a new heating system, a new ventilation system. This is all in the head of the people. But doing something just by minor investments and by using building automation, this is not in the head of the people. So it's a lack of awareness combined with these split incentives and combined with a insufficient framework on the regulatory side that prevents us to create that business that should be done to bring our buildings in Europe in an energy efficient position where they could be. So somehow we were convincing enough. So we were lobbying, of course, against, or not against, together with the people from the European Commission, and we had a number of very nice proposals on the table that furthermore we discussed with the European Parliament in several sessions, and so in the end something came out which was, in Europe we call it, it's everybody from Europe, we call it a trilogue, and the trilogue is basically where the member states and the European Parliament and the Commission, they discuss and they bring that regulation and all together. And this needs to be approved by the COREPER. The COREPER is basically the committee of the permanent representatives in Brussels. So this is a second step that has already been taken. So the agreement was basically reached in December last year. We had an approval on the 19th of January by the COREPER of the new upcoming EPBD. So we expect that the plenary approval of the European Parliament will be done in April, so that the publication of the new regulation will be done in May, maybe beginning of June, but we think it will be May. And then 20 days after that, the new regulation will come into force, and then the national parliaments, the national governments, they will have 20 months for the implementation of the new regulation. So what's in the new regulation? We have, first of all, because of that reasons that I told you, we will see mandatory requirements for building automation and controls in large non-residential buildings that will be implemented in the Article 14 and 15 of the new European Energy Performance of Buildings Directives. So we will have it in 4 buildings, and exactly it will be for existing and new buildings. It will be necessary by 2025, if the building has a installed system of over 290 kilowatt of heating, or have a building system of 290 kilowatt in ventilation and air conditioning. If you have such a large building, which will be about a building that might have 2,500 square meters. So that's about the range. If your building is larger, or that large, then you have to invest in building automation and controls, and you have to fulfill a number of functions that are built in the system. So it's not about technology, it's not about hardware, it's not about software, it's about functions that we want to see in buildings. So that's why we come to a definition that we see here. So the building automation and control system is basically not some technical means, it's not a computer or not any kind of hardware. It can be built up by software, it can be built up by hardware. I mean, of course, you will need some sensors, and you will need actuators, you will need intelligence that can be installed in any way, but we're not asking for a certain kind of technology. What we're asking for, and what the law is asking for then, is several types of functions, which will be continuously monitoring. I think that's of major importance, because what you don't monitor, what you don't know, you cannot control it. Logging of data, so that you have the data really stored in, I don't know, can be in a simple Excel sheet, can be any kind of logging of the data. Analyzing the data, allowing for adjusting the energy use. So this gives the building operator the opportunity really to control and to manipulate, to analyze and adjust the energy usage in the building for all technical equipment. Then the benchmarking of the building, so the Parliament was very keen on having also benchmarking, so that we know this building has 2,500 square meters, it has a certain kind of envelope, so the we're talking about benchmarks that we can set up, and only if you control your building and you have the data from your building, you can do a benchmarking. So there's an opportunity to give benchmarks for the different kind of energies that you use in the building. And the third thing is that the people who are responsible for the facility and for the technical building management, they get opportunities to do energy efficiency improvements in the buildings. Oh, I think that's just a number, and I don't want to go further. You can read it, and you will find these also on the website, I guess, this presentation. So you can go to the website, and you can also download the original text of the regulation. If you are interested, we can also talk about that later in a short discussion. So now about residential buildings. Residential building is totally different because normally you don't have this split incentives that much like you have it in other, or this missing incentive to save energy like you have it in non-residential buildings. At home, you pay your energy bill, right? So what you do is either you want to have it warm, you pay for it, or you want to live energy efficient, so you turn the heat down or up, however you want it. So it's a different set of incentives in residential buildings. And that's why we don't have that really harsh and that really mandatory requirement set. So here it's basically the same functionality that can be required. It's a decision that will be made on the member state level. But it's basically here that we don't say member states shall set requirements, but here member states may set requirements. So this is something that can be decided on a member state level, and member states are free to decide how much of this proposal they will implement in the national law. And then we have another article that's of interest for us, and that's something that I told in the beginning, that in many countries there's no requirement to have a room-by-room temperature control. So you use the temperature control in your living room, and by using it in the living room, you control the whole house. This makes not a lot of sense. And in the new directive, it will be that whenever you build up a new buildings, you will be forced, and it's a really, really, really low invest, because a thermostatic radiator valve or even an electronic radiator valve or an actuator, this is not a lot of money. I mean, when you invest in your house, this is less than 0.0 something percent of the whole investment, but it gives you a saving that's so a payback period that's just a few months, one winter, and the money is back. And so with new buildings, you will be required to have individual room controls. And where you don't have this room, so you have a loft apartment or whatnot, any fancy house, then it can be designed like heating zones, where the heating zones have to be controlled individually. For existing buildings, there's only a requirement in Article 8 then that when the heat generator is replaced, then you have to install a room-by-room temperature control. So the heat generator, I mean the heating industry, they certainly want you to change it more often, but in general it's changed every 20 years. So every 20 years, so after 20 years, basically all, so from now on it's 21 years, all the buildings will be equipped with individual room controls all over Europe, and that's already the case here since the 1970s, since the oil crisis. After the first oil crisis, it was decided in Germany already to have this room-by-room temperature control. So this will be all over the place in Europe, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So that's basically the new regulation that's coming up. It will be coming up, as I said, we think it will be published in April. The decision-making processes are more or less done. We are looking forward to having this implemented. We're especially looking forward how it can be implemented then in real life, because 2025, it's not tomorrow, but it's not far away when you look at it from an investment point of view. So that's the new regulation of building energy performance in Europe. If you have any questions, I'm ready to answer. Fine. Okay. Thank you very much. And have a nice light in building.